All right. What's up, guys? Welcome back to episode 14 of the What the Deuce podcast. It's just me and Hashim today, but we actually needed some help to make sure that this was a very special episode. This man's been doing it since 2008, even a little bit before that as well. We have the movie Meltdown man himself, Bryan. What's up, my guy?
How's it going?
Listen, dude, I want to let this know, like, right in the beginning. I love your podcast so much because it's literally the exact conversations that I want to have with my friends that no one wants to have with me, you know? Movies have been like my first love since I was like a child, but I've yet to meet anyone in my immediate facility who feels the same passion I do. And you
I
guys
can
kind of,
attest to that. I can
yes.
attest to that.
And you guys kind of channeled that a little bit for me, you know? So, like, I want to thank you for doing it as long as you have. And I'm glad that you're here, man.
Well, thanks for having me. Yeah, definitely. That became like a reason for the show to exist. And even when I started doing it, I don't think I fully like understood that. But it within like the years that came after that, I was just like, this needs to happen. Maybe just for my sanity at this point, but it
Yes.
was being that movie geek. I do really remember a time when I didn't have anybody else, and I had these thoughts, but I didn't have those conversations because I hadn't found friends that were into that kind of stuff. And I guess I've said this on my show many a time. The sort of infancy of what became Movie Meltdown was I started working at a video store,
Oh, wow.
and for several years there, like this core group of people that work there, like we're standing around supposed to be working. I guess occasionally we were,
uh,
but for the most part we would spend the entire night having discussions about movies and whatever dumb thing came up in conjunction with that. And then when I look back on that now, I'm like, oh, this is exactly what I'm doing. I just hit record now. Instead
Yeah,
of
oh,
it's for
wow.
clocking in, I
everyone
hit
now.
record.
So that well, I'm guessing, was it not Blockbuster since you just said video store?
I was gonna say Blockbuster too.
It was not. I tried Blockbuster for a day, and I was not. I did not. It didn't agree with me.
Was the blue
So
uniform too much? Like, be honest, the
it
blue's
was.
kind of
It
gaudy.
was. It was creepy because that's the thing. I would have already had been working at my other job. I've again on my show. I've outed it many a time. I worked for years at Suncoast. So it wasn't even standard rental. If you're kids, you don't even know what the hell I'm talking about. It was a mall-based chain that did nothing but like video sales. So
Okay.
figure that out, kids, because it seems in the world of streaming and
Uh,
Amazon orders, it seems ridiculous that you go to the mall and buy movies. But
Uncle
Oh
Brian,
wow.
what's a video? Is it like a TikTok? I'm not sure what this is.
yeah, only on a square box, and you put it in another square box and did play it on your TV. It was
When did
magic.
Suncoast go out of business? Did it go out of business like?
Yeah, well, for mine, I was there for it. That was kind of fun.
Oh, okay,
We
wow.
closed out that store, so that was fun. It was right before the show. I think was the tail end of it. So maybe 2006, 2007,
Oh wow.
maybe a little earlier. It could have been 2005. I've lost track now, but
Yeah.
technically there's still one or two because the guys I know that used to work with me, we found there's like at least one that I don't know if they bought the license or what, because they still have the actual sign and all of the artwork and everything is still up in some mall in like, I don't know, Minneapolis or something. Like there's some mall somewhere that still has one that is operating. I don't know if it's freelance or what they're
Hmm.
doing, but so I need to, if I can find time to drive there,
Yeah, you guys should take a road trip down there for nostalgia's
That
sake.
could be a really cool
just to
idea, actually.
go
Yeah.
and just be, sir, stop touching the signage. Please stop, get away. Please get out.
Stop
So, but
crying on the doorstep, please. We
yeah,
understand, but
yeah,
come on.
basically.
Oh man, there's still that one Blockbuster that people sometimes make videos about, like the one that's like in the middle of the country or something like that, and people just go to like the last
There's
Blockbuster.
there's still, yeah, it's that same thing. I don't know how they even kept the name because I thought the company went under. But yeah, that was my thing. I'd already been at Suncoast, and Suncoast was such like just geeks hanging out. And I mean that again, geek is a loving word in my world.
Yeah.
So like we were just movie geeks and we hung out, and it was corporate run, but in the beginning it wasn't so overwhelming and it was pretty laid back. And so we just sort of hung out. And then there was issues, and I don't know. At some point, I had switched jobs, and I was like, "All right, well, there's a Blockbuster not too far from me. I'll try that." And I worked there for a 1 4 hour shift.
Oh wow.
I was so creeped out. Like it was just product to them. Like the
Oh yeah.
manager
Yeah.
quotes. I don't know. I don't know what that guy's job was. He sat in the back all day, and like I'm guessing, did not know a thing about a movie other than like their regional sales. And I'm sure he knew the business backwards and forwards, but like he was not like a movie person.
Yeah.
And I stood out front with this girl that was working the counter, and like basically her job the entire time was just to hide from the surveillance cameras.
Yeah.
There was one spot in the entire store that you weren't on camera at any given moment,
And she was always
and she
there.
would stand there
Yeah.
the entire 4 hours.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is not movies to me. This is a bad job. So
I feel like
Bryan.
Ursulon had the same experience. Ursulon, you worked in the movie theater, right?
Dude, yeah, I was gonna say like this is blowing my mind because I had like I have a very similar experience. Like my first job was a movie theater. I used to work at the Regal near my house, and I thought by working there I get to meet all these people who are really into film and like really into movies, who want to go see
would hope
movies
so.
after work. But nah, dude, I literally met zero people who were into movies like I was. Like no one wanted to go watch movies after work with me and stuff like that. It was just like I was so shocked. I was just like I spent like 8 hours with these people every single day, and they would just talk about like how much just being there sucked the entire time. And I mean I get that.
Anything
Like
about movies.
it wasn't fun, but you know, it was just wild. Like I would want to talk about the film that just came out that we all got to see early and stuff like that. But like none of them saw it. They didn't really care. So I was just like, God dang it. Oh man.
yeah, see that was that moment like working at Suncoast. I finally did find people that were equally as geeky about movies as I was. And as soon as like I got there, I was just like, okay, let's get into it. And like, so it would mostly just be us talking about movies.
Do you still keep in contact with them, or
I mean,
have you ever got them on the podcast?
Over the years, yeah, I've worked most of them into the show.
Yeah.
So there's, I mean, at this point, nobody that's a regular was there, but there are, I know, regular listeners. There's some of definitely a couple of Patreon supporters that were in that group.
Oh,
So
wow,
like
dude, nice.
we've got, yeah, it's like there's still like kind of this tight knit group that like keeps up with each other on the internet. And you know, so yeah, I've slowly kind of worked the guys in as like special guests over the years. So
Okay.
Would you say
Yeah.
this analogy works out? Like, would you say like that video store that you used to work at, was that basically like the arcade to like people who were really into gaming back in the day as well? It was like a place where everyone who was really into gaming would go to the arcade, and then everyone who's into movies would go to the video rental store. Like, do you think that?
probably, but I feel like there's also just so much of a social aspect to what was going on at the video store. And I know a friend of mine was really, we years ago had like a small independent theater in town too that closed. But it is funny, he has that same story for the movie theater. Like because it wasn't a chain, because it wasn't a whole bunch of dorky kids that were just complaining about being work, like the people that worked there loved movies and they loved that theater, and they really did create a little family. And that's kind of what we were doing at the video store. There is like such a weird social aspect to movies in general, because I think it's different than like video games. You can kind of argue, I like this one, I don't. Like I think you can get into those kind of conversations in other things, but like I feel like there's something specific and kind of special about film, because everybody just like, if you're into it, you bring so much to it yourself, and then you can kind of discuss these different opinions. And like if you're cool, like it becomes a good conversation. It's not just an argument, it's like actually like expanding, and you're both coming up with different theories of, well, I think this happened, and the next movie I think this is gonna happen. So I think because it brings this like the social aspect to it, like it's kind of different than a lot of other like hangouts that people had. But again, maybe I'm just overly romanticizing it all, but
No,
I don't know, that's how it was for me.
I think it works because, like, I mean, you could think of it like this. So, like, for a video game, right? So everyone could probably have like a very different experience playing a video game. Like, every single person who plays a game could play it differently, right? But when people watch a film together, they're watching the exact same thing, like together, right? And then afterwards they're able to interpret it in their own specific ways, and then they can have even more of a discussion because they both watch the exact same thing and they all internally interpret it differently, and then they can talk about it and have that massive conversation that's probably a lot different than the video game, because you know, with a video game the conversation could end like, oh, I just couldn't beat this and I just gave up. But with a film, everyone saw the exact same thing and they can have that like more engagement, you know? Yeah.
I think it helps when it's art, you know, when it's any kind of art. You know, I think you can probably get in those conversations about music and painting or, you know, whatever your art form is. But I think about like, I don't know, I feel bad for people that are sports fans, because I'm like, all they do is argue. Just like, no, your team sucks. Like, how often do you get into big, like, well, I feel like the arc of the team was, you know, it's like they don't get into these deeper level conversations. They're just like, our team's awesome, your team sucks. Where it's like, I don't know, there's just so much more when you bring something like film into the
I was gonna say, I think my co-host would argue with you on that point, but to your point, I kind of agree with you. I kind of agree with you. I've always been more into player stories because I guess I can put that romanticized arc in there. Like they started out as like a rookie from coming from like college or high school, and then they made it all this way, and I could attach myself to that player. But in my mind, you know, as the years go by and the team's still there, I eventually kind of lose my interest, you know? So maybe I could say that like me being really attached to the players in sports is something that akin to my love of movies. But I see what you mean by like the sports team and just arguing, you know?
I mean, there's definitely an arc that you could find there, or there's interesting people's, you know, backstories and stuff like that. So I won't totally rule it out. Based on the guys that I know that are like really into sports, it's rare that I get into that. You know, it's like it's usually just talking about what happened. They don't dig any deeper into it. The way that like geeks get into their thing, and like when they're talking about, you know, geeky stuff, it's a different level. Like they go in.
Yeah, man. Yeah. They literally talk about every single minute detail, and like meanwhile, whenever people talk about the game, they talk about like the statistics at the end, and that's about it, really. You know?
Yeah, it's way more cut and dry. Whereas like it's just messy once you get into the geeky things.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, I think that like, you know, with all that, like in this current time, I think movies have become like a bigger rise than they ever have in the past. You know, like people being at home and things like that. They have nothing
But
to
I
do
feel
except.
like people don't talk about movies like they used to.
Oh, well, I was going to get into that. I was going to say, like, with the rise of, like, streaming services and a lot of movies going on streaming service, I feel like, surprisingly, I think movies are making a slight comeback, you know? Just a little bit. Because, like, for example, like, obviously this isn't a huge radar thing, but, like, I heard about this new film that was on Hulu called Palm Spring, and I probably would never have went to go see it by myself because none of my friends would go with me. But I was able to watch it at my home now because everything's on streaming now, so I think there might be something to say, like, the films are, like, coming back just because people are at home and have nothing else to do, really. So
I feel like they're like the consuming, the way that people consume movies has changed so much in the last, even in the last 10 years, let alone 20 or 30.
Yeah.
But like, I think I think we're losing that sort of social interaction. Everybody's able to watch everything because it's streaming directly into their house now. So people are seeing probably a lot more than they used to. But I also feel like at best, maybe you get on some version of social media and kind of be like, oh, this was okay. No, this was stupid. Like it's so minimal.
Yeah, I see that.
Whereas like, back in the day, you would go somewhere. Like now we can't leave the house. But like when we used to go out into the world, you would be, you know, it would devote time to like interacting with people and having a conversation about this thing that you saw. And like, now I don't know how much people, again, short of podcast, short of people rambling to themselves on YouTube, like without that extra level of media, like I don't feel like regular people do that much anymore. I think that's the part that's kind of going away, is like normal people who aren't super geeky probably don't sit around talking about movies like maybe they would have, you know, 20 or 30 years ago. But I don't know, maybe
watching a movie, watching a movie used to be like a dedicated thing. Like you took time out of your day and like went and watched a movie. Now you can just like get anything you want at any time of the day, and there's like no commitment to it. So people don't really.
That's changed so much over the years. Just thinking back when I was looking back at like kid, you know, going back to the kid stuff. Like, I mean, it's amazing. Like, I don't think you could even explain it to kids now, or even like a lot of kids that are grown-ups already that have been nothing but exposed to the internet since they've been born, watch a movie. Like you can't explain this to kids now. It's like, I mean, hell, think about before video came along. It's like you could not watch a movie whenever you wanted to.
Yeah. That's wild.
Anything pre-80s, like that's it. Like you saw it in the theater.
It was a theater run and then it was gone,
you were done.
Yeah.
Maybe if it was a huge movie, they'd bring it back as like a revival and it would go to a theater again. Or if you're lucky that like Sunday night at the movies and they might play something again on TV, but you would never personally have access to movies. And that to me is the thinking back, like, how were you a movie fan back then? You know, it's like, you just had to keep going to the theater, I guess, and watching the same movies over and over again.
That one movie would resonate with you so much more because like, that's the only media you're consuming.
Oh yeah. And that was definitely me as a kid. Like I latched onto movies so much more then than I feel like I do even now, even as much as a geek I am about a lot of stuff. But it's like, because it was so finite then, and because like you didn't even the when they first started coming out with like merchandise related to it, like because you couldn't watch the movie again, the merchandise was the only thing you had
Oh
to
yeah,
sort
that's
of
true. Yeah.
keep it in your brain. So it's like, I think that's such a tie-in too as time's going
Mhm.
on. Sometimes people will argue that that's the downfall of all of it, but I'm like, when you didn't have anything else, like that was your way of like
Interacting
fandom,
with
like
it.
attaching yourself to this movie that you didn't have access to 24/7 like everybody does now.
Yeah, I think it's really true when they say that like nothing's very popular for very long anymore. Like I know this is like impossible to think about, and because like it basically laid the groundwork for everything that came afterwards. But do you think if like the original Star Wars trilogy came out like in this era, in this like pop culture era, do you think it would have had like the impact that it had like all those years ago? I know it's kind of impossible just because it was groundbreaking back then, but like the storytelling and the characters, that's what I'm kind of like focusing on.
I mean, again, that's kind of my go-to. Like that was such an
Yeah.
initial thing for me as a kid, and one of the first ones I really remember. Like I remember going to the theater. I remember being so attached to that movie.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's like trying to put it in the perspective of like, okay, that never happened. We didn't have that, and then just jump to 2020. I mean, it would, if it had a decent build up, if people knew. That's the thing, it's like now there's so
Yeah.
much other stuff to compete with, but if people knew it was coming, it would probably be the Avengers of that year, and then it might be gone. And that's the thing, like I don't know that it would have the lasting power that the trilogy and then the entire saga has now
Oh my
taken over
god,
the
the entire
industry
saga.
and
Yeah.
Yeah.
created its own version of the industry, kind of. But
We are both like a bit younger than you, but like the only thing I can remember like something similar to that was like when Avatar was like in theaters for like 10 months or something like that, and then as soon as it left theaters, basically just like left everyone's mind. And I just it was something funny to like the point where like it was in theaters for so long, and everyone was like, "Let's go see Avatar again, let's go see Avatar again." And then like nowadays, you think back and like that technique did not work at all. It basically just like left the public consciousness as soon as it left like theaters.
I've always questioned why Avatar was so popular. I feel like it was an okay movie.
It's just the
yeah, I mean
technology,
that's
I
the thing.
think.
It technologically was breaking ground, but like as a story, it's pretty slapped together from a bunch of other stories.
Yeah.
So it's
Wasn't it
not
like
doing anything groundbreaking in the script, but I think everybody was just there to see the visuals, I guess.
wasn't it like one of the first 3D movies that came out or
It was back when
Yeah,
3D was opening up again, I think. Yeah.
yeah, and definitely was designed to be 3D more so than anything else, ever probably. I mean, that's really all that it seemed like Cameron was interested in, was like, how can I, which has become most of his career, is like, how can I push the envelope in some weird technical way? And then as time's gone on, I feel like he's like pushed the importance of story and characters like further and further aside because he's
Hmm.
so fascinated with the technology involved. So
And
yeah,
the
a lot of
ocean.
directors end up doing that, really.
Don't forget the ocean. He's really obsessed with the ocean as well.
Oh, well, and that's when it started. It's like you watch the first few in him, like he's just a hardcore movie geek, and he's making schlocky sci-fi, and he's making, so by the time you get to like now he's successful enough, he can sort of indulge his weird things that he's into. He's like, ooh, I want to go to the bottom of the ocean. And they let him. And like
Yeah, he's
he
just like, go
shoots
ahead,
the
man.
documentary down there, he shoots a movie down there, like and he starts creating new technology to be able to shoot like that. And then he likes that, so he's like, oh, what else can I do? So like everything from that point on, it's like from the time he goes to the bottom of the ocean, he is not the same filmmaker that he was when he started.
Oh my god, dude! I just swear, like, if there's no underwater section of the new Avatar films, I'm just gonna be disappointed. I'm gonna think he wasted his entire time. That's all I'm gonna say.
aren't there like 6 or 7 coming out? Like
There's
new
like
Avatar
5,
films?
bro. I feel like James Cameron's gonna make Avatar films until he dies. That's like his life goal right now.
I think he's gonna talk about making Avatar films until he dies.
Okay, yeah, I'm
Because
being too
how many have
optimistic.
come out since that
Yeah,
first
yeah.
one? None. So
Does
like-
it keep getting pushed back or what,
Dude,
like what's going on?
the Avatar 2 was supposed to come out, I think, like 2014, and then it still hasn't come out. And now they're saying like 2021 to 2022. Like every single year it just gets pushed back another
Yeah,
year.
yeah, I see that. I saw that list of the Disney movies that are supposed to come out in the upcoming years.
Oh yeah, I guess they are Disney films now too. Huh. That's wild.
everything's Disney. You can't fight
Everything's
it.
Disney, yeah. You know,
But I
actually,
think that is a really good example of like how much the system has changed. That like Avatar was the biggest movie in the world that year. Avatar was it was one of the few times Cameron did that both the last two movies he made, essentially. Like, he became like the biggest box office moneymaker of the year,
Mhm.
and he became an Oscar contender, which
Wait,
rarely
really?
happens. But well, yeah, I mean,
That was his first?
Titanic won the
Oh,
Oscar,
okay,
and
yeah.
Avatar was up for
Right,
best
yes.
picture, I think. Like, Avatar was up there with the rest of them, which those kind of moneymakers don't get nominated for like best picture. They get technical awards, but they don't get best picture. So like, Cameron kind of found a way to make that work these last two times, but at the same time, it's like, there's still no lasting power. Like, I feel like at least
Mhm.
Titanic, still people sort of look back on it fondly. But even a few years later, by the time you get to Avatar, like, nobody,
Really
like,
talks about it or anything.
yeah, at the time they were obsessed with it, but within a couple of years, like, does anybody even reference it now? Except guys like us that are like, dude, what's up with, how come
Yeah.
it's gone?
It's just
You
gone.
know?
It's just there. No,
But
no
like,
Halloween costumes
normal
or anything.
people don't just sit around talking about Avatar the way that Star Wars, you know, or any of these other franchises that like somehow latched on when they, especially like anything from Star Wars on,
Mhm.
all those 80s properties that people are super nostalgic about, and they still freak out and go just knee deep into when they talk about them. But like, nobody's talking about Avatar like
How
that.
long do you think people are going to talk about like Endgame and like the new Marvel Cinematic Universe?
I think for
I
as long as they
wondered
keep
that
making
too,
them.
because I do think those are good. Like, I really like them. I think they're well made technically, and they kind of have a decent story arc and some
Mhm.
really good characters along the way. So I think they've got a little more staying power because of that. But it does make me wonder if the whole thing goes away, because we've just drug it on for a decade. That's like, it was never really gone. You'd have 1, 2, 3 movies a year sometimes. So it was just sort of handing the baton to the next one so you didn't forget about it. But if Disney Plus decides to drop all these shows and they're not going to make new theater run movies, like, I do wonder if in 2, 3 years people just don't even care anymore.
Yeah.
Maybe.
And then how soon before they just reboot the whole thing?
Uh,
Because you know they will.
I mean, I agree with you. They probably will, but I don't think they can anytime soon. Like, I'm not even talking like 10 years. I think it's going to take at least 30 years for them to reboot it, because you know how the public backlash that they'll get from recasting like Iron Man or something like that. Like, people
There's
will
so
lose
many.
their mind if they
But
even
see,
try.
I kept thinking that, but these last 10 years or more, like, I've watched them do, like, for years I was like, because, yeah, to move universes, but Star Trek is such a big, super successful thing.
Mhm.
And I'm like, they can do Next Generation, you can do all these other series, but you can't recast that old crew. You can't put a new person
Because
as
they were so
Kirk.
like,
You can't do another Spock. And then they did, and people kind of were fine with it. It's not as beloved as the old ones, but they got over it.
Yeah.
And then I think some of the other things, like some of these other movies that they've turned around and within a 10-year span have rebooted, and like, people just kind of get over it a little. So I think that, I don't know, maybe it's because people don't care about stuff as much as they used to, or because they're so distracted because a new thing comes out every 15 minutes. But I feel like people aren't, the death grip isn't quite as
Mhm.
strong on the geek properties as it used to be years ago.
I want to believe you, I really do. But the thing with the Star Trek thing is that was before like the mob that Twitter has become was like really a big thing. I
Oh
feel
yeah.
like as soon as they announced that they're thinking about recasting Iron Man, for example, the entire Twitterverse will explode, and network executives will be so freaked out. Studio heads will be like, "No, just cancel that, pull the plug. We're not going to bother with that anymore," just because of like how fickle that was. I mean, Star Trek was a huge thing, and I mean, I hope I don't offend you, but I actually really like the reboots compared to the originals. I'm not gonna lie.
Oh no,
But
that's the thing. I think those, definitely, that first one, they found a good way to make all that work, and that third one is really fun. People
yeah,
have
yeah.
issues with the second one more than any, but like, I think those are some great actors that they brought in. But like, if you would have asked me, will this work? I'd be like, hell no. There's
Mhm,
no way you can put them in those roles and have people give it a chance. But they did.
mhm.
Or another new one, like the one we've referenced a lot of times lately, is Solo. Now,
Oh
granted, the
yeah, Solo.
movie
Yeah.
didn't do that great respectively, but like, I watched that and I'm like, if you would have asked me if you could have recast Han Solo, I told you no. You know what? This guy's doing a pretty good job, actually. So
Really, that's so
I think he's
interesting.
good in the role. Like, I think that guy's a great actor, and I think he does the best he can. Like, that is an uphill battle. Like, you're
It definitely
taking
is.
one of
Yeah.
the most iconic characters ever and a great actor that the whole nation loves, and like shoving some new person in that role. Like that
Exactly.
sucks for him. But I think he did a pretty good job at it.
You're actually right.
People didn't like that movie, but they were also just burnt out on Star Wars at that point, which is another reason I think that's slipping as time goes on.
I firmly believe that the only reason that Solo failed was because they released Solo like literally like 3 months after the last film, right? They didn't give anyone any breathing room at all. It was a weird decision there.
I think that's part of it. Also, like, they've had so much trouble putting them together. Like, that one changed directors midway in. Like, so they've got so many behind the scenes problems, and then they're trying to shove it out really quick. So people, oh, don't forget about Star Wars. I'm like, really? You think
Disney's milking it as much as they can?
Yeah, I mean, that was probably it. They oversaturated their own market. I mean, even for something like Star Wars, that you think that's a bottomless well, but
I remember when they announced, like,
people are just like, I'm gonna go watch something else.
I remember the craziness when they announced like the new Star Wars movie, like before they saturated the market.
I mean, yeah, like
Force
Awakens, yeah.
Yeah, the Force Awakens, yeah.
That's actually
and that was huge. Like, so again, like if you can balance things perfectly, like it works. Like you can just be like, oh yeah, this is what people have been wanting for the last 20 years because things didn't go well last time we had new Star Wars. So really all you have to do, JJ, we're throwing it up. It's on the tee. All you got to do is just line drive, just knock it out there and do the things we kind of like, and people will be happy. And that's pretty much what he did, and people ate it up. It was one of the most successful movies ever. So
yeah, it really was. Force Awakens was crazy. Oh my God.
Yeah, it's like, but you can't, there's only so much of that you can do. You can't keep going back and hitting them again and again and again. Or even fans like Star Wars fans will be like, we've had enough.
I was actually working at the movie theater when Force Awakens came out, and it was insane. It was like a hurricane every single showtime. People, like, we have the way the theaters worked out, it's like in a shopping district, right? And so like the line started like in like the middle of the theater, and then went all the way back to the McDonald's, like almost half a mile out. It was just a huge line of people just waiting to go see Star Wars. It was just like, oh my God. I mean, you probably, I imagine you went to experience like that with the prequels as well, right? I thought it was pretty interesting because like in one of your earlier episodes, you mentioned that you watched like Return of the Jedi again. And I was just wondering if like your opinion of those films have changed at all in like the 20 years since then, or the 10 years since then,
Which prequels or original trilogy?
The prequels, yeah, the prequels.
I don't know that it's changed because I've watched them recently, and I've revisited them in the last, even in the last few years, I've kind of gone back and watched all three of them, and I think I still kind of land pretty close to my original feelings. Like Phantom Menace is just such a mess. I mean, it's the most pure. It is the most George Lucas movie maybe since Star Wars. Like, it is the most genuine George doing whatever stupid thing he wanted to do. And I kind of appreciate it for that. I don't really love it as a movie, but like I appreciate his vision completely not messed with by the audience. And you never get to see. So like he's already making changes by the time he does Attack of the Clones. He's changing, things because of the response to the last movie. And then as time goes on, like you're not even done making the movie and you're already getting backlash on the internet and you start making changes. Yeah. So, so I don't know. I think those two have their good points about them, but they're still not perfect in any way, shape, or form. I found fun in them. I think, again, people hate Attack of the Clones. I think that last half is fun. Yeah. By the time it's not even, it kind of is Star Wars. It's Star Wars in the most comic booky way. It's like by the time you get to that last battle in the arena there, I'm like, it's just John Carter. Like it's just pulp
Yeah, you're right.
novels
Actually, yeah.
that happens to be branded with Star Wars lightsabers. But other than that, like it's so sci-fi fantasy that I'm like, really, if you just relax a little with the Star Wars and enjoy it, it's fun. It's ridiculous, but it's fun. And
I don't mean, Ursula, we're talking about like nostalgia. So like how much does nostalgia play into how you look back into old movies?
It's an interesting game because there are ones that you look back on, but you'll realize it's something you haven't watched since you were a child, or it's been 10 years or something since you revisited this movie. So that's kind of and again, geek that I am, I try to look at this as sort of a bigger thing. I try to get as waxing philosophical about things as I can and be like, it is interesting when you go back and watch a movie again, because it's the same movie, but you're a different person.
Yeah.
And 10 years might have gone by and you bring a whole new batch of baggage with you when you show up and watch this movie again. So you're processing everything totally different. So I feel like I can appreciate things the same way I did the first time I saw it and still kind of love it in a weird way that's in a bubble. But there are ones that I'll revisit and be like, oh, huh. You know, now that I look at it as I'm using quotes, grown up, this isn't a great movie, really.
Oh God, what was I thinking about? Oh.
Yeah, there are times when I'm just like, what? I mean, I see it. It's still there. I still get it a little bit, but now I at least have enough sense to step back a little bit and be like, but you know, this screenplay is terrible.
Yeah.
You know, this actually transitions really nicely to like the main topic that I wanted to talk about for this podcast, which was like the childhood films that we all grew up on, or like just like the films that we watched the most as kids. You were talking about like, you know, like going back to these older films you used to watch as a kid and seeing them like through the lens of all the emotional baggage that you experienced in your life. And with that, like the film I wanted to pick was Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade as like my favorite childhood film. Even though like I know technically it's not a it's not a film made for children, it's a film made for everyone. But I watched it so much as a kid, and I didn't even pick up on all the little insights. Now I think it's interesting because like you recently talked about Indiana Jones on your podcast, like the fourth one, which I'm not going to mention because I hate it so much. But
that was most of our conversation, trying to force ourselves to, can we even talk about it without just gritting our teeth and being angry the whole time?
Oh my God!
It was an uphill battle there too.
I was waiting for you guys to mention the CGI monkeys, and no one did. I was just like, "What?" That was like my biggest issue. Oh my God!
I still think that snake in the quicksand is worse than anything. It's such a hammy moment.
Yeah,
and
it really
just
is.
Keep hitting you over the head with it. And I'm like, oh, this is bad. Like, CG monkeys are one thing. You can almost just be like, oh, they were doing everything in CG. That's just bad CG, whatever. But that snake moment is just bad delivery, bad writing.
Yeah, it's like
even the performances. I'm like, guys, really, what are you doing here? Like,
but Bryan, it's a callback to the scene from Raiders of the Lost Ark. Don't you get it? It's amazing.
Yes. Yeah. And again, they rely a little too heavily on some of those. Like, see how it's a reference. We referenced ourselves. Isn't that great? Calm down, George.
But back when Indiana Jones was good, I really loved Last Crusade. You mentioned like talking about like seeing it through like the new lens, and like as a kid I just really enjoyed the adventure. I thought like Indy's dad was hilarious. I love the banter between them. I love the fact that he meets like Hitler for some reason and just like basically like just like gets him to sign his book or whatever. Every moment of those films was just like so magical to me. I love the action, I love the adventure, even more than Raiders of the Lost Ark, just because like I really love the dynamic between like Indy and his father. And then like as I grew up, I became to like appreciate it so much more, just because I like reflect on like my relationship with my father and like how similar it was to like Indy in his life and always trying to live up to things. And I love Last Crusade so much just because of that one scene when like, I was gonna say spoilers, but this movie came out like so long ago. But
I mean, sometimes I still do it. People are slow to get to the movies sometimes. I know that. So sometimes I still give a heads up even on something that's like 30 years old.
But yeah, okay, well, spoilers, but like in like the final act of the film, Indy has the ability to grab for the Holy Grail, the object that he's been searching for his entire life, the object that will make his father proud of him for once, you know? And as he's reaching for it, his like dad just looks back and is like, just don't do it. You don't have to. Indiana, like you don't have to. And I'm just like, it gets me every single time. Like it's that acceptance and like that love, that just, it made me feel so good, and that's why that film has just always been like a sticking point in my mind. No, I'm not crying, just a little bit. It's fine.
You can. It's all right. Well, that's the thing. Like again, I still try to be artsy enough to appreciate that kind of stuff, and I'm like, it is that moment where he's like, yeah, we've seen you in the other movies. It's all about fortune and glory for you, but I'm here. I'm your dad. This relationship's more important than you killing yourself trying to get that cup.
Yeah.
So it is like it's kind of an important moment, like definitely within the characters, but for you at home, hopefully you're sitting there watching it going, oh, okay, maybe there's something I can learn from this. I try to look at these again to maybe give me a reason for doing all this nonsense that I do. Is like, I always say that it's like we're sort of trying to figure out life filtered through movies. Like
Yeah.
what lessons they're learning in the movies. Maybe I can learn something too. No guarantees, but
Yeah, and even as like a kid, like I mean, I always thought the movie was hilarious, and now as an adult, like I'm laughing even harder. Like I didn't even pick up the fact, and this is again like a minor spoiler, but the fact that Indy and Henry Jones all slept with the same girl, I'm just like that was hilarious to me. I didn't even pick that up as a kid, and they were just
yeah,
like
that's
talking
not one
about
of
it.
those things as a kid you're really attached to. You're just like, hey, that chair's spinning around. That's
Yeah,
funny. But
exactly.
like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
there's another conversation going on there for the grown-up.
Oh my god, dude. Hashim, have you ever watched Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade? Like, have you watched any of them? I don't think we ever talked about
I
this.
No, I have not actually.
Dude, bro, how are we friends, bro? I've known this man for like 15 years, and he's still.
I'll do it after this podcast.
But no,
I promise.
like
I mean, I try not to shame people for like, oh my god, how have you not seen this movie? But
Oh no,
I mean,
we could shame him.
for
It's
geeks,
okay.
it's hard.
Yeah,
It's hard. I know. We get so attached to our stuff. So I try to make it more like productive. I mean, like, oh, you should watch this. I think you'll like this movie. You know, try to
Yeah.
make it as you know.
So
I
are you the one in the friend group that recommends all the movies?
I try to like open it up and get as many people involved as a lot of people just it's a lot of work and most people don't want to do it.
It's a commitment,
So
you
then
know.
that makes me in the driver's seat whether I like it or not. But I try to, and that's the like a weird thing we're doing now is I'm trying to number one get like listeners involved in choosing movies we're going to talk about, and then we're like we have a new like element of chance thrown in the middle of it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm trying to find an interesting way to kind of mix things up and give us some different stuff to watch. But yeah, I mean, over the years I've definitely sort of drove where we're headed a lot of the times, whether anybody else liked it or not.
Okay, well, Hashim, would you like to go next?
To follow up, my reason's not as good as yours, but like I was gonna pick the movie Matilda.
Okay, I've actually never
I thought
seen
it was-
Matilda, so we're kind of in the
You actually
same.
haven't?
No, I haven't. What is it about the film that you really?
I don't know. I
latched
just
onto?
remember watching it and it was a really good movie. Now that I think about it, it was like kind of propaganda to read books.
And I'll have none of that.
No, I can't read. Excuse me. Hold up.
Constantly telling people stop reading, watch more movies. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all the storytelling with moving
It's
stuff.
all-
It's cool. I forget who's the star of Matilda. I know she's like a big actress, right? Or she is now.
I think she's one of those that kind of got out of it pretty quick.
Oh, really?
She's
Oh,
still-
never mind. Then.
Mara
I've
Wilson?
seen her now. She's a grown up and she's doing. I'm trying to think if she's like a writer now or something. But yeah, she does. I've seen her on stuff now, but she kind of got out of acting. I feel like.
For some reason, I thought it was Winona Ryder who starred in Matilda, but that's way off. That's way off.
Yeah, she's a writer now.
Okay, maybe she's still telling stories. You know.
The star is really Danny DeVito. We all know that.
I did not know that Danny DeVito was in that film. I now have to check
Yeah.
it out.
I believe he directed it.
Are
if
you
I
serious?
remember.
No
Yeah,
way. Are
he
you
is.
serious? That's crazy. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Nice. Wait, have you ever seen Matilda, Bryan? Or
I feel like years ago, it is one of those I think about and go, I need to sit down and watch that, especially knowing the Danny DeVito part. 'Cause,
Exactly.
Like, he's got a weird, twisted sense of humor, so it's like
Yeah.
I kind of want to appreciate that more now, kind of looking back at it. So it's another one for the list for me. I kind of remember it a little bit, but not much.
I really need to experience more pre-Sunny Danny DeVito. That man has too much. That's just
What's with It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia? Like I go to school in Philadelphia, and it's like a cultish thing for people that live in Philadelphia.
I
to
mean,
watch
I
it.
imagine so. I mean, it's like Friends in New York. Like everyone's like, oh look, it's the Friends apartment. And it's just like everyone's probably like, look, it's the Sunny bar, the Always
Yeah,
Sunny in
yeah.
Philadelphia bar. I don't think they
Is it
actually
like-
filmed it in Philadelphia.
Is it like The
though.
Friends?
What do you mean? Oh, you mean
what's
like
the show about?
Oh, the
Yeah.
show's really awesome. Like it's like a bigger twist on like the Friends formula. Like it is just like a bunch of friends and they all go to a bar together and then like wacky shenanigans ensue. But like I really like the show just because like it's a bit more like I don't want to say edgier because that's not the right word for it, but it's just
But it
it's,
kind of is.
yeah.
I haven't seen a ton of it, but it's definitely not the like homogenized, like primetime safe version that Friends was.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's
okay.
it's more creative is not the right word either, but it's just like it's more out there, like it's just I feel more attached to it just because like I feel like
It's
that
like
sense
it's
of
like Nick
humor.
at Night.
It's not like the common It's not common
Yeah.
denominator stuff, you know. It's like only people with a high IQ watch Always Sunny in Philadelphia, you know, like no one else can. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Okay, Brian. What were you gonna talk about? Your taste will probably be a lot different than ours, just because
Oh
we yeah.
yeah, yeah. Well, I was thinking about because that's the thing. Like I can pick the bigger ones that are like I don't know, they're kind of I feel like they're just touchstones for everybody at that age. And kind of like I said before, it's because there were probably less movies and they played for longer, so they sort of affected such a huge,
Hmm.
portion of the population at that point. But so I was trying to like I'm like yes, obviously like Star Wars like changed everything from that point on.
Yeah.
I do remember like the first time seeing Raiders of the Lost Ark, and it was kind of that same thing. It's like
Mind blowing.
again
Yeah.
spoilers for many years ago, but the finale
Oh my god.
I
Yeah.
as a child was not prepared for melting people.
Dude, the face
And
melting.
I'm a
my
sick
god,
and
dude.
twisted person, so I think that's what I've realized too, is like the things that I've watched and the things that I've latched onto have helped kind of guide and create and mold this weird person that I am now. So I started thinking back of like, okay, if we get some of the bigger stuff out of the way, what was the other stuff that I
Mhm.
was like
Yeah, like
attached to
what's
as
some of the weird things that you just watched as a kid over and over again?
now the one this is if we're sticking with like kid and like the ones that are supposed like I guess Matilda's a good one because that was at least aimed towards children. When I think back at like one that I was really kind of into at the time, and I think back on it now and I'm like, what a weird thing to have existed. And I had a lot of specific reasons I liked it.
Hmm.
I'm guessing you're not familiar with this movie because nobody in the world is, and why should you be? It was called Chomps.
Okay.
Now,
All right.
between each of the letters, there's a period because it stands for some stupid.
It's an
Years
acronym,
before
yes.
Daryl stole that idea. This was basically it's the story of a young up and coming scientist wannabe kind of a kid, and he makes a robot dog.
Oh wow.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. That's definitely not been done to death nowadays, but
Well, certainly. I mean, this is like late 70s. So like
yeah.
you had, and it's sort of playing on the Benji thing because they picked. I think initially they were throwing it out like it was going to be a Doberman, but they're like, no, we want it to be like a normal, average looking dog that then's going to have superpowers essentially. So they have this Benji looking dog that then at times he like twists and takes his head off.
Okay.
You see
all
where
right.
I'm becoming a weirder and weirder person as a child.
I mean, I could
Um,
definitely see it being fun though, right?
I mean, it's been so many years since I've like sat down and watched it that like I think back and I'm like, even thinking on it, I'm like, oh, this is such a weird
Concept.
type of comedy that
Mhm.
like I don't. Yeah, it's like I don't even think I would find it funny now. But again, it was appealing to kids, I'm assuming. But there were like such specific. Like I'm a dog person anyway. I like robots. The main character's name is Bryan, so I was already
Oh,
suckered in as a
nice.
kid.
Yeah, you felt attached.
But here's the main thing, and me already finding my little geek crushes even as a child. His girlfriend, the female lead, Valerie Bertinelli,
Oh wow.
who
She is.
as a child I'm sitting here going, okay,
Yes,
she's
I'm
easy,
feeling
guys.
something right now.
Yeah. So as geeks, we immediately start latching onto our weird crushes, and so that was a good early one for me. So I think back and I'm like, yeah, it checks all these boxes that I understand why I was attached to it. I feel like it's ridiculous,
Hmm.
and if I watched it now, I would possibly be fighting to finish it. The weird thing is, I hadn't like looked anything up on it in years. When I looked it up today, the story is by Joseph Barbera
Oh,
of
wait,
Hanna
really?
Barbera.
No way, you're lying.
He came up with the story concept. He is the co-screenwriter,
Where was
Joseph Barbera.
where was Hannah
So,
during all this? What was Hannah doing?
Hannah, I think he was reluctant. They, as I looked into it today, like the rest of the company did not want to move into live action, and he
Yeah.
had this big concept that they were going to cross over and start doing live action movies. And the
Hmm.
rest of the company's like not liking this idea, so they made like a 4-picture deal and tried to get this off the ground. And since we're not talking about them as the superpower that is Hanna-Barbera in the film industry, I'm guessing it didn't go over real well. Probably because of Chomp.
Wait, so Joseph
that's
Barbera
crazy.
created like Tom and Jerry and stuff?
Tom and Jerry, Scooby Doo, Flintstones,
Oh, wow.
Jetsons.
Gilly
Yeah.
Gorilla.
Oh my God. Yeah. Wait, did you watch the Scoob movie? Did you like it or nah?
Oh,
'Cause,
the one
like-
that just came out.
Yeah.
I didn't see it.
Okay. Nah.
I watched the trailer. I'm like, oh, Again, I was such a Scooby-Doo fan. Again, more for the like mystery
Mhm.
horror themed. I was such a horror
Oh,
geek.
then you'd be
Yeah.
Still
disappointed.
am.
You'd be really
And
disappointed then.
well, I mean, Scooby-Doo just sort of plays on all those tropes, and like in the old incarnation did it so perfectly. Like even as silly as it was, like it just everything about it, like the monsters were cool. The like you go back and look at that artwork, like the backgrounds that they drew are like brilliant. Like
Yeah.
they're so well put together
And they're so
for a dumb
iconic
kids
too.
show.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
and it's legitimately got some decent jokes along the way. So yeah, I was a big fan of that. So I watched this new trailer and I was like, I'll probably watch it for that reason, but it doesn't. Again, time they try Scooby, which they do a couple times a decade, and it
Yeah.
never goes over. So
I
I
mean,
don't know.
They
again,
animated.
you gotta watch it for yourself. I'm not gonna like shoo you away from it, but if you're going in for the mystery aspect, I think you'll be very, very disappointed. Again, you watch it for yourself and decide. You know. I'm looking at pictures of Chomps, and all I'm seeing is this picture of this boy holding the dog's head, like just out, like it's like detached from his body, and
This
everyone.
is why I'm messed up today.
I was gonna say everyone has to see this image. Like if you're listening to this podcast, right, everyone, just like Google Chomps and just look at this image of this dog. It's fascinating.
Well, and you see it in action. The more I saw that image earlier, I was like, oh yeah, he like legitimately like twists as though he would be breaking the dog's
Oh,
neck.
God, dude.
Pulls the dog's head out, and suddenly it switches from a live dog to this fake robot. So it's got these dead glass eyes. It's really, again, like I think back and I'm like, this is why I'm a weird, messed up person. These are the things I was drawn to.
But if you didn't watch this, we might never have had the podcast in the first place. So maybe it's a
I
good thing.
So that was the kids' word, but I was thinking like I also grew up with cable, and like I sometimes I do want to question my parents and be like, I just sort of had free reign. Like I just watched whatever I wanted to, and again, this is why I'm what I am now. But so thinking back, and this is one show Misty and I have bonded over this for years. It's also her favorite movie. For years, I continually watched on a loop The Beastmaster.
Okay.
Possibly the greatest movie ever.
I
no one else
mean,
thinks that, but
I'm sorry. Yeah.
I've never heard of it.
it is sword and sandal, I think, has become the subgenre it's known as.
Oh, yes, I've seen
shirtless
this. I've
dudes
seen
with
this.
swords.
I've seen
this is Mark Singer, and he not only is a sword swinging badass, but he also has the power to communicate with animals.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he has like a little raven that he talks to and things like that. Wait, was this movie on Mystery Science Theater, or am I thinking of something else?
I don't think so. They did a couple of sequels that it's sad that they're much lesser sequels. And it even had a TV series that spun off like in the 90s, I think, that didn't last long. So, but I feel like I would remember if they did it on Mystery Science Theater, I think. So there might just be a knockoff of that movie, which is saying something. But yeah, but it is, I mean, it's fun if you like those kind of movies. It's
played in true fantasy.
It's very fantasy, of especially 80s era fantasy. It is Don Coscarelli, who went on to do bigger horror movies and was a pretty well-known director. But yeah, even he's not fun. The studio messed with it, and he's not even happy with how it turned out. But I am, and that was one of those that as a child I watched probably more than I need to when I think about some of the horrendous things going on in that movie.
You watched it for Siri? What's her name?
Oh, Tanya.
Yeah.
Actually, at the time, probably, because there's a scene.
Roberts.
There's a very specific scene that boys and probably some girls of that age, found themselves to. I'm guessing they decided, oh, this is what I'm into. Like it's an awakening happened in a lot of young boys and girls, possibly.
Well,
in the mid 80s to Tanya Roberts.
I am a straight man, and this dude's abs are very nice.
No, Joe.
Very
What's
nice.
funny is it's even more so like by the sequel. The sequel didn't happen until like the early 90s, but like you can tell like in that first one, he's just like a pretty in shape dude. Like he started hitting the gym by that second one. Like his abs are insane by that second movie.
He was like, okay, time, let's go. Yes, pumping iron. Yes.
Mark Singer, he's a pretty cool. To make a lifelong dream come full circle, just this past year I got him to sign the poster, and it's hanging on my wall right now. So
Nice.
Oh wow.
the
Yo-
Beastmaster himself signed my poster, and that's the level of geekdom I love. The Beastmaster.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about this. I noticed that in the beginning of most of your episodes, you have like a celebrity saying, "Hey, you're listening to Movie Meltdown or whatever." Do you just like go to conventions or like film festivals and you just like get the chance to do those things, or like how did most of those
I
come
mean,
about?
those just sort of came about. Well, I mean that was also my goal in starting the show, was not like I also wanted to work people in that were involved in the industry. Like I
Absolutely,
wanted
yeah,
it to be, hanging out with my friends and us being geeks and talking about movies, because
Yeah.
that's very genuine. But at the same time, I was again coming off I was already doing like interviews with people for like trying to put together the print magazine. And so immediately I was like, well, no, I'd rather just like interview people and work it into the show. So like from the very beginning, I started doing that. And over the years, we've had some amazing guests, and
yeah,
like
man.
I try not to just. Sometimes you get a really short interview. Sometimes you're sort of forced by their people to do it in a very specific way. But like again, when I look back, like the things that I appreciate the most are like when it works right, when it happens the way I want it to, I actually just kind of sit down and talk to them. And it's not as much of an interview as it is sort of hanging out and talking like I do with my friends.
Hmm.
And like there are times when I've expanded it, and like if it's somebody that I've talked to before and they're cool, I'll be like, hey, do you just want to, skip the interview kind of thing and talk about a movie? So
Yeah,
we've done ones that are just me and an actor, or somebody from film that like I'll have them pick a movie that they're not involved in. They're not pushing a product. They're just like, I saw this movie. It's really cool. Let's talk about it. And we just sort of have that same geek, session that I do with everybody else, but it's just somebody who happens to work in movies. So
Oh wow.
that's
again,
nice,
like
man. Yeah.
along the way, we've accumulated a really amazing group of people that
You guys have brought together a somewhat a legacy of just like all these familiar people. That's awesome, dude. Like I hope like I was technically still in our infancy and things like that, but I hope we were able to like a little bit capture that, because that's what I was going for when we invited you on. Like I really just wanted to have just a discussion about movies. This is a very different from our usual format, but this is just kind of what I wanted to do, just because like this is what I've always wanted to do.
A
Except I
different
just
take
didn't
from
know
usual.
anyone to go with. Yeah.
Yes, for
It's
me,
very
this is every episode.
Oh, that's
My
fine.
rambling about movies is every episode.
You know
so.
what, man? You can have the audio. It's fine. You can just post it on yours. Okay. Well, I guess we could go back to a little bit of what to do for a sec. So we're getting close to the end of the show now, and what we usually like to do right at the end is we like to talk about. We talk about a lot of negative things on our podcast just because of the current state of the world, but we like to end it
Yeah.
on a positive note and talk about something that we're excited about. So this could be anything like in like something in your personal life that you're excited about, or something in movies or film or sports or whatever. It could be anything. Just something that you personally are excited about and want to throw out to the world. If you're not ready, that's perfectly okay. Hashim, are you ready to go with yours, or?
You can go ahead.
Okay, great. Well, last week was my birthday, and so I was excited for that. But this week, since I recently turned 21, I'm excited to get I'm finally gonna get my license, and that's the number one thing I'm excited about. I can finally feel like a fully fledged adult who can go to bars legally or whatever. So
I mean,
that's
if we had bars and gathering places,
yes, of
still,
course,
you know,
yeah.
the world has come to an end, so it's a terrible time for this to happen. But
Absolutely, yeah, no.
otherwise, this would be great.
I want to start a petition. Maybe not me personally, but I want to start a petition that basically says that if this like virus continues on for like a lot longer, we should be able to subtract a single year from our age, just so I don't have to waste my 20s. But yes,
I think that's what I'm wondering. Again, as you threw this out, I didn't know ahead of time, so I was like, oh, I don't have anything offhand. And then like the more I keep thinking about the way things are, since we are kind of time stamping this for like this weird quarantine world that we're currently living in, like this is what I've thrown out a lot more lately, is like I don't know that we're going back to the way it was. Like everything has changed
Everything has
so
changed.
much
everything's changed
in
forever,
these
yeah.
last 4 or 5 months. It's just like in such a short span of time, everything has been
In
rearranged.
January, like no one knew this was gonna happen.
Yeah, like I mean, it was almost overnight. I mean, we saw stuff happening overseas, but like by the time it hit here, it was literally within the span of a week or two, and we were like on lockdown,
like
out of nowhere. So it's hit such a specific. I don't know. It's just hit in such a specific way that I don't know that we're going back to the normal way that we were. Maybe we will. I kind of hope so. But I'm trying to decide like what the world can be if we've changed it. Because I've been saying for years that I feel like it's already been changing. Like a lot of the stuff.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Yeah.
It's like we already weren't like gathering together like we used to, and a lot of that is the internet. A lot of it, we have all these alternatives. Maybe we weren't going to the theater that much because everything's streaming. Maybe we didn't go hang out at bars as much as we used to because instead we can just hang out at our house. And now you don't even have to leave the house to get food. They will drive it to your house and deliver it to you.
Man. Yes,
I mean,
know that
they would always do that
yeah.
with like pizza, but like now you can Uber Eats anything you want to your house. You can have them bring groceries to you. Like you don't ever have to leave your house.
Amazon 2-day shipping.
Yes.
Everything was like
2-day shipping.
Everything's right there.
Everything comes to you now. So I'm like, we've
Malls are
already
closing.
been on this road. So I'm like, I'm wondering now that we've been forced into this lockdown, like, are we ever gonna go back to the way it was? Because we're so not even that we're comfortable in it. We adapt, and we've been forced to adapt so quickly that I'm like, when things, if they have the option to open back up, it's like, are we going to enter into the world?
Are
like
people
gonna
going to want to
really
do
go
it back?
back?
Yeah, are people going to want to go back to?
I saw like the other day they're talking about maybe like canceling all of the new films the rest of this year.
Yeah,
like,
I heard that too. Like this Oscars is going to be
maybe
crazy.
just going to push everything back to next year. And I'm like, so that like as a movie geek, like that's a whole year that like we've
Nothing,
been watching stuff on a different, on a regular basis, new stuff coming out every year, dealing with, we time it for the Oscars, we time it for the summer releases. Like everything is built around the seasons, and all of that is gone this year.
Dude,
so I'm like,
wild,
we've
dude,
never had a year like this before. So I'm like, as a movie geek, I'm like, well, what does that do to us? And then how is it going to be if it goes back to normal? Are we going to return to it? If it never goes back to normal, like, are we always just going to be sitting in our living room watching a movie? Like,
a lot of movie theaters are struggling right now too. So like,
it's and that's what I'm wondering now is like, is it? So I'm trying not to be like totally negative about it, which most people, when I bring this up, everybody gets depressed. But I'm like, well, I'm just trying to be like,
optimistic.
We've continued to change as a society. Our technology definitely is always pushing that technology or this new way that we interact with technology and watch movies. Like I don't know the answer, but I'm kind of, if I'm not excited about it, I'm at least trying to figure it out.
That poses a question that I had for you.
Wait.
Do you have a dope?
Okay.
Wait, do you have a dope movie setup at home, or?
I can watch stuff.
Okay.
It's been such a weird ride because so much of what I've been doing is just focused on the show.
Yeah.
And then along the way, I've moved more times in the span of the show than ever in my life put together.
Wow, dude.
So there's still so much stuff that's just like stored away that I don't even know. I'm like, I've got that dumb geeky collectible, but it's somewhere. I don't know where it is. So like half of my stuff is still, and I really don't have enough room where I am now to branch out with all my geekiness. So
hopefully when you have like that retiree money and like
when that podcasting money comes rolling in, I'll be able to buy that big no. But so I mean, I at least got a decent sized TV recently, and I am watching them on a Blu-ray player. That's good. I don't get super high tech about it because it's changed so many times over the years that like there's only so much I can afford to sink into it. So now I'm like, if I can watch it and it looks pretty good, I'm fine with it. Like if I get to a point I can afford that, I will. But I'd rather just sort of watch as many movies as I can and try to like enjoy them, but not worry so much about the technical end of it.
Excuse me, if you're not watching in 70 millimeter, what's the point? Like, why bother?
I know there are a lot of people who think that
4K HD,
but I mean, there were a whole group of kids that grew up watching stuff pan and scan on a crappy quality VHS tape, and they love those movies just as much. So you take what you have and you find the stuff that you like along the way. And Eventually, if you're rich, you buy better quality versions of it.
Actually, for my birthday, I went to Goodwill and I bought myself like a really crappy old TV just so I could play my old PS2 games in the way I played them as a child. Like, I don't know why people think like that, but I just did that. Yeah. Okay.
So.
Well, Hashim, hopefully that was enough time for you to think about what you're excited for, my guy.
You know what I'm excited about?
What?
Once this podcast finishes, I'm gonna watch Indiana Jones.
Which one?
All of them.
Okay. You don't.
Except for.
Are you going in release order? Or are you going chronological order?
I think.
I mean, there's only like one difference there, but yeah.
I know it's only one movie off, but you still end with everyone's favorite, Crystal Skull.
Oh God! You also have
Start
to watch
with that one. That'll set your bar real low.
Oh, that's wild. Could you imagine if people started with Crystal Skull? Like, oh my God.
I mean, somebody probably did. There had to be
probably
kids
a lot
that
of
grew
people,
up
yeah.
when that came out, and they were like, "Hey, what's this on cable? Huh? Who's this guy?" You know, there had to be kids.
Yeah, no, it's kind of like me.
I feel sorry for him, but you know,
it's kind of like me who watched the prequels and then I watched everything else.
Yeah.
I actually watched the prequel to Star Wars first, and then I watched Star Wars back.
That's become an ongoing geek battle. Is how do you, especially for now, the geeks have grown up and have kids. It's like, well, what order do I show them to my children?
Mm-hmm.
So it's an ongoing thing of, do I go and, because I mean, it makes no sense if you do it in like chronological order. Like all the points that they're making in that original trilogy are totally nullified by the time you've watched the prequels first. So
I guess that's true. I didn't notice as a kid though.
It really, yeah. It's like if you stop and think about it, like they're really setting up these story arcs in that first three that are like totally useless if you watch it in release or like chronological. If you watch the prequels first, it's just like, wait, well, duh. Obviously, we know all these things. Like,
you know, I think I was
kind
just
of kills it.
I think I was just stuck on the fact that like Padme was like 15 and Anakin was like 4 or something. And I just always thought that was kind of weird.
Oh no, we're all into that, right? I mean, that's how we all roll.
Yeah.
Anakin's a player, you know.
Oh my God, dude, yes. Oh my God. Okay, well, did you say what you were excited for, Bryan, or?
I mean, that's pretty much it. Because that's the thing. I don't know of anything else at this point. Like everything is so up in the air.
Oh, that's fair.
Especially
That's
like
fair.
society wise, but especially movie wise. Like it's not normally I could be like, oh, I'm really looking forward to seeing this, but like everything that was coming out is gone now. So
You know,
it's like
2 weeks ago I saw like this thing, like movie theaters said they were gonna open for Tenet, and then Tenet got pushed back. I'm not sure what's going on now. Like, are they gonna still open in July 30th or something?
Honestly,
were
no one's
really-
gonna be comfortable watching a movie either in this climate.
I mean, you're gonna be so spread out in the theater. It's gonna seem really strange.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So yeah, I don't even know what to be excited for. Like everything is so in flux now. Like just kind of taking it day by day, and I'll watch the movies I already have until we get some new stuff. So eventually we'll get new movies, I hope, and we'll watch those. That's what maybe I'm not looking forward to is this, like we discussed this on a recent episode. Think how many things are going to come out of this.
Oh my God, you're right.
Sitting, I mean, how many writers are sitting stuck in their apartment right now and they're just like, I'm going to write about a movie about people being in quarantine. So we're going to have a million quarantine horror movies. We're going to have a bunch of rom-coms about people stuck in a building together.
Like, we're going to have a quarantine purge.
We're definitely going to have a purge. So like, it's like, there's so many things that are going to come out of this that are going to be so time-stamped that they came directly out of the quarantine. So
oh my God, yeah.
I'm hoping that at least a few of them are good, but we're going to be just so overrun with that stuff. Assuming things do get rolling again, it's all going to be quarantine material. Yeah. Every TV show is just going to be people sitting in different rooms talking to each other on Zoom.
Oh my God, dude. Wait, didn't they already have like a horror film about that kind of, like, I think it was called like Unfriended or something, right?
There's a couple they've tried to do that with, that they're like everything is done through technology. Everything is done with them like trying to figure out a mystery by going through people's Facebook posts and like, you know, all kinds of stuff like that. So
Black Mirror.
Yeah. We're living in the Black Mirror.
And in the end, TikTok was the real villain.
Just like Scooby-Doo, we pulled the mask off and it was TikTok all
the whole
this time.
All right, well, Bryan, thank you so much for being on this episode, man. You were awesome, bro. I hope you had a good time, just like, talking about us with movies and things like that.
Definitely. Again, this is what I do. Just being a geek and talking movies.
As you
Yeah.
can tell, it's not my cup of tea, but Ursula loves his stuff.
Well, hopefully you find the ones that you like. So we'll,
Yeah.
you know, I'm sure he'll pick a lot of things and you might like some of them. So
Well, in my defense, I feel like everything I recommended to Hashim through our friendship he loved. Like when I discovered the Rocky films, I made everyone I know watch all the Rocky films, and we
And
just
I'm glad
like
you did.
got off that. Yeah, it was amazing, bro. Oh my god. Okay, well,
yeah, there's so many rabbit holes.
Bryan, where can they reach you again?
I mean, everything kind of stems. You can just the easiest version is moviemeltdown.com, and it's, you know, you can find, again, we've got, you know, all your social medias. We've got a Twitter feed, and it's all on there. And we do have like a Patreon. That's sort of the new thing we've kicked off. We've
The horror casting.
we turned it into like the horror club because we
Yeah.
had so many people that were into horror movies. So now we're just like, they're getting exclusive episodes that are nothing but horror movies, and we're getting people involved that are letting them pick the horror movies. So yeah, that's
Before
all
you
on
go,
moviemeltdown.com.
If there was one horror movie that you recommend to watch after this podcast, what would you recommend?
Like recent,
Or
like not a classic that everybody's seen before,
or something
recent,
that like gets you into the world of horror, I guess.
I can, well, I will put in a warning beforehand. If you're a weirdo, if you're somebody who can handle things that are a little out of the norm,
Yeah.
because that's the thing. I got into, it's one of the most recent ones we just did, and we've watched a lot of terrible ones, and I'm just like, oh, this is bad. And we sometimes we just blindly pick them, and we get in, and we don't know what we're in for. And we recently watched The Perfection.
Okay.
It you are not prepared for it. Whatever, even if you watch the trailer is misleading. So it's best to go in blind, and you're gonna get in and be like, am I watching like an indie drama? And then like 20 minutes will go by and you'll be like, oh no, it's horror. It's horror.
Oh jeez, no.
And by the time you get to the end, you will not be prepared for the kind of weirdness that it twists itself into. So
Wow.
Dang,
The
man,
Perfection is really well made. It's just visually really well done. And on top of that, the writing is sort of different and stuff that we're not used to. It's not a normal American film. The director's American, but it is done more like a film from overseas.
Yeah, isn't that a common trend? Like horror movies like overseas are like much worse or like much more intense than the US ones?
Definitely, this is, we get into, because this one's like the Korean revenge horror. This one's drawing a little more from, and those are pretty intense if you've seen any of those.
Yeah.
So you might wade in. Maybe the American ones are a little easier to take, and then dive into, you know, your Old Boy or something that most people are not prepared for. So, but yeah, The Perfection. I was caught off guard by how really impressive that movie was.
Okay, nice. I'm looking forward to. Was it a recent film or an older one?
Yeah, it just I think in the last 2 years, and it was funded by Netflix, so it should be streaming somewhere in your house. You don't have to go anywhere, thank God.
Arslan, when are we watching it?
We're gonna watch it right after this. What are you talking about?
Just prepare yourself. It takes a few weird turns.
So I should invite my underage sisters then, right?
No. Oh, definitely. Once you see what's going on in this movie, you'll really wish they weren't in the room.
Just out of curiosity, did you ever watch like this? It came out a couple years ago as well. I think it was a French film called Raw.
I think I know the title. There's so many movies. I can't.
Yeah,
that's
there's a lot.
why I just keep adding new stuff to the list, because it's like I can never get caught up. And I kind of look at that as a good thing. I'm like, you're never done. When you're a movie fan, like there's just always more stuff out there for you. So that's another one. Like I know the title, but it's on the list.
I would recommend, if you ever do watch it, I would recommend not watching the trailer and just going in. Like it's an insane experience if you just go in with that perspective.
That's kind of, as much as, I mean, I like a good trailer. Those are fun in their own way. It's its own art form to create a good one, but they're so bad at putting them together a lot of times, and they ruin everything. That some of the greatest experiences of my life watching movies has been stuff that I knew nothing about, and I just started and was like, oh, like what am I in the middle of here? So it's kind of fun just being thrown into them every once.
And that works out perfectly. All right, cool. Well, thank you guys so much for checking out the What to Deuce podcast. We'll be back next week. Make sure you follow us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and leave your comments and reviews. Always help us out. Hashim, you want to say anything before we sign off?
Thank you guys. I really enjoyed this episode with Bryan, and make sure to check out his podcast. And
all right, cool.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah. All right. Bye-bye, guys. See ya.